Welcome to the Building Godly Manhood podcast. Our goal is to equip and to inspire you to be the man God is calling you to be. I'm very excited to announce our guest, Barnabas Firth, today. Barnabas, welcome.
Hey, Ben. Thanks for having me.
It's amazing to be hanging out with you today, Barnabas. I've been looking forward to this for a long time now. Looking forward to our conversation on sanctified singlehood. So Barnabas is a dear friend of mine. We met recently, about 30 years ago. Okay, we grew up together.
Almost
We're
a lifetime ago.
exactly, yes. Yes, I think we were about 4 years old when we met for the first time, if I recall correctly. Um, it did involve an ER trip. We're not going to get into that one. Great story. Like, I guess that made us fast friends. Anyway, Barnabas, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us your story.
Yes, well, I am currently serving as the executive director and the curator at the Norman Lowell Gallery in Anchor Point, Alaska. And I'm sitting in my office at the gallery right now, speaking with you. And what drew me to this work, after being really in maintenance and construction for much of my life, is the cultural aspect of the gallery here. Norman Lowell is a Christian, or was. He just passed away just a couple weeks ago.
Hmm.
But in addition to being one of the great painters of all time in Alaska, he really, in his art collection, he sought to tell a specific story about Alaskan life and about the culture here and the way that faith ties into it. And as we look around us at a culture that's disintegrating in so many ways, away from what we should have been or should be, this is right here the work that I do as a cultural landmark of uh, what we ought to be, of the way that we look to God and honor Him in the works of our hands.
Now you're talking about your travels, Barnabas. Last winter, you spent a good chunk of time in Taos, New Mexico. Very interesting story. What were you doing in Taos, New Mexico?
Okay, well, I did not intend to go to Taos originally, but the gallery here is only open in the summertime, and so I have a lot of flexibility in the wintertime. Sometimes I stay here in Alaska and work on different projects through the winter, but I also have the flexibility to go and do other things. And I got several years ago, I decided that I want to work towards climbing Denali, the highest point in Alaska and in all of North America. And um, I knew that climbing high elevations to train for that in the wintertime here in Alaska is not ideal. I probably wouldn't survive that. And so I needed to look around at more temperate locations for training during the winter months that I actually have time to do that. I Googled one day, where do people go to climb mountains in the wintertime, high elevation mountains? And a lot of people go to Santa Fe, New Mexico, it turns out. So I started looking around at the opportunities in Santa Fe, and the price of staying in the Santa Fe area for the winter was just out of my reach. And so I cast a wider net in my search, and I happened upon this Craigslist ad where someone was looking for help on a little horse ranch in Taos, New Mexico, in exchange for staying there. And I contacted her, and she was really excited to have me come and spend 3 months in Taos. And so I packed my little car up and headed down the Alcan Highway and ended up in Taos and stayed there for 3 months. And my primary purpose there, of course, was to climb the mountains in the area, the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. They call them the Blood of Christ Mountains in English because they have kind of a reddish hue. And the tallest mountain in New Mexico is Mount Wheeler, which is right outside of Taos at just over 13,000 feet. So I took me several tries, but I did achieve the summit in the middle of winter. Lots of snow and wind. So that was an exciting activity. But when you do something like that, so many other things open up. Going somewhere where you don't know anyone, don't know anything, totally different culture. I
Mhm.
found a small congregation there that really was an encouragement to me and hopefully to them to be able to work closely with them through the winter time. Uh, Got to experience the art and the culture of Taos. It's a very artistic town. There's just so many things when you step outside your comfort zone, when you're willing to follow these opportunities as they come up. And Taos, New Mexico was definitely a very defining point in my life, and I got a lot out of it, and it very much solidified my desire to keep on pushing towards this goal and eventually conquer the tallest one.
Denali. Yes. So I think one of the incredible things about being single is having a little bit more flexibility to just respond to opportunities as they come up. And first of all, I mean, just first of all, get out there and engage those opportunities. Take advantage of that flexibility. I love how you've had this really unique opportunity come up, or opportunity come up to serve overseas this winter. So I'd love to hear more about that and just how you're using this flexibility as a single to do this very impactful thing.
Yes, so I am planning to go and spend this winter in Albania over in Eastern Europe, working with some very close missionary friends of mine. And this really speaks to the way that I move through life. It's a great blessing to be able to have this opportunity, but again, like so many things in my life of late, it's not something that I went looking for. Um, I told a little bit about going to Taos, and the reason that that came up, it was just a Google search that then led to finding an ad on Craigslist and reaching out to people that I didn't know and being offered a place to stay and a work to do. And and I achieved so much of my goals through that just by throwing something out there. So I was going to build on that this winter. This was my plan. I was going to build on that this winter. Taos and New Mexico tops out at 13,000 some feet. Well, I need to work my way up to 14 and 16,000 in order to continue this quest towards Denali. So I was thinking about spending some time in Colorado or Washington State. And I had actually just started doing my Google searches, and I had just shifted my mindset to preparing for or to seeking out what might be available uh, in this idea that I had to continue climbing mountains. And just as I shifted my mind to seeking this out, I got this message from my friend over in Albania, which is a very long, detailed message about why I need to come over and spend a winter in Albania. And I didn't even, well, I had to think about some logistics for a little while, but I basically answered him almost right away and said, "Yeah, I'm coming."
Mm.
Because that was that was just the flow of opportunity happening, in that I had just shifted my mind to starting to think about what I'm going to do this winter, and I had this idea in my head, but this opportunity came open, and and I don't even have all of the resources and the ability, like for example, financially, I had the resources to be able to do Taos last winter. I don't have the resources and the finances to be able to do Albania, but I grabbed hold of that opportunity, and I was like, if God is calling me to this work, if God is opening this opportunity for me, then he will provide the ability for me to go and do it.
Mhm.
So I just jumped straight into that, and I don't have a very lengthy checklist. I don't have a lot of planning on what exactly I'm going to be doing in Albania. I am going to uh, go over there and uh, offer my services and my capabilities to my friends who are missionaries over there, and kind of see where this opportunity goes. And once I get there on the ground and I actually see what the needs are and what my abilities are, then I will try to be extremely purposeful and extremely energetic in getting as much done in those 3 months as I can. But not being in that culture, not knowing anything about those culture, not knowing anything about those people, I'm not trying to formulate too much of a checklist of what exactly that's going to look like, because I don't know. I'm kind of walking into that. And I think so much of my life and so much of the way that I live, and I really encourage uh, people who are able to have more of that openness of mind and that willingness to follow opportunity. And some people may listen to that and feel a little bit lost and just
Mm.
like, well, how do I find these opportunities? How do these things come up? And to that, I would just use maybe an analogy of fishing. When you go out fishing, you and I have both done some fishing.
Oh, yeah.
Your brother, Samuel, outfishes all of us. But
All of us combined.
yeah, but we both love fishing, right?
Oh, yeah.
And in fishing, especially on the river, I fish more in the river than the ocean or the lakes. But you go to the river in the morning and you don't know where the fish are in the stream. You don't know what time they're going to start striking, and you don't know what color of lure or what bait they're going to want that day. So you're kind of throwing out there blind in a sense, but you have to cast. You have to cast that line out there, and the time may surprise you. The
Mhm.
lure that you use may surprise you what actually works, but you have to cast the line out there. And I think
Mm.
that that's really having that openness and that willingness to be challenged and that fearlessness in going forward and taking opportunities. All of Taos was able to happen just because I saw a Craigslist ad for somebody that I didn't know and I reached out to them. These opportunities come up if you have the willingness to throw the line out there. And you don't want to go out there and be ridiculously unsafe. You want to have uh, wisdom in the way that you approach things.
Mm.
But the biggest component of living a purposeful life is having that openness to step outside of your comfort zone and to put yourself out there for opportunities to come up, because God provides opportunities if you're stepping outside your comfort zone. If you're staying inside your comfort zone and looking for opportunities that you are comfortable with, you're probably going to do a lot of sitting on the couch. But if you're
Gotta
willing,
step out of that boat. Gotta get
yes, if you're
comfortable in
willing
your
to step out,
uncomfort zone. And I know this family who you'll be spending the winter with, and I know they will put you to work, and you'll be
yes,
making a great impact over there. And I really look forward to just hearing the stories and hearing how God is using you over there. So I want to continue along this vein of just really practical applications for singles, for single men. And so I want to tackle a question that is relevant to every man out there. And so this question is almost as relevant as saying, if you breathe, this will resonate with you. And so the question is, what are strategies that you've taken or that you'd recommend for fighting the temptation of lust? Because as we've hinted at earlier, it is a universal battle. And if men are not talking about it, um, half the time it's because they have not been victorious over it. So it's not that it's not a problem, it's or that's not a challenge. It's just that it's buried under the carpet. And so if we're going to be victorious over this and really win here, I think we've got to talk about it more. So let's share with us some very practical advice for being victorious over the temptation of lust.
Yeah, it is a large, it's a very impactful thing to all young men in our society, particularly single men, but all men, to be
All men.
honest.
Doesn't go away. Like I said, it doesn't go away when you get married.
And it is difficult to talk about because, well, there's several reasons for it. It's an uncomfortable topic, and it's a topic that we still consider very gendered in that we talk about it very different when it comes to men versus women. So there's a lot of discomfort in talking about it in group settings or combined settings where we're talking to both men and women. There's a number of things, but like you mentioned, one of the difficulties about talking about it is the reality of many people not having achieved victory over it. And
Yes.
and I to be completely honest, that's a part of the way that I feel in my own life, and that's a difficulty in that I know I'm not. None of us are perfect, but I know I'm not even where I want to be in this ongoing battle. And so it can be very discouraging because we want perfection, and every one of us goes kind of rides on a roller coaster of these thoughts come up that we wish wouldn't come up sometimes, and so forth. I think it's extremely important in a practical sense to, well, really two things that I would point out. One is to build that mindset and that purpose, to understand the battle lines as they are and to be honest about that. We have to look at God's pattern, and we have to not only identify that as truth and uphold that as truth, truly and honestly in our heart. I think there's a temptation sometimes to look at the overwhelming nature of this topic and to try and find justifications to bring the bar down a little bit.
Yeah.
We have to be honest with ourselves about what the battle lines are. And it's not going to do any good if we only pay lip service to where the lines are and where the standard is. We have to really make that a part of who we are. And that goes back to building that purpose within our lives. And part of the purpose that we build, especially as men, is understanding the beautiful things that we defend. And even as a single person, the pattern that God has given of the family, the man, the woman, the children, the grandparents, the way that all works together, that is a part of what we defend as single people. And the beauty, particularly as we're struggling with lust, the beauty of femininity is completely lost and destroyed by what by a perversion of God's pattern for sexuality. When you look at pornography, when you look at the way that sensuality puts itself into advertising, I mean, you can't scroll through Facebook, you can't watch YouTube videos without being subjected in some way to this. So we're living among it. I can choose not go to the strip club, but I still watch YouTube videos and I watch football games and I see these advertisements where that is very much a component of what they're
sex sells.
Yes, absolutely. And whether it's something that we would say is small like that, or all the way to the most extreme pornography, what we're looking at is we're looking at a destruction of femininity. We're looking at a destruction of something beautiful that God created and God bestowed upon the people that we as men are called to defend, to respect, to protect. And to build that purpose in your mindset of, I, as a man, stand for these things and defend these things, these people. I defend the pattern of family. Building that mindset is the first part of the battle. And then we have to get down to living it, which is where it's challenging, which is where I slip up sometimes. I invite thoughts that I shouldn't. I sometimes, when I'm watching something and something pops up, maybe I'm not as good as I should be about looking away, and so forth. Every one of us, if we're open and honest, we can have, and we need to have, these personal discussions about our vulnerabilities and about how every one of us does have these struggles. It's extremely important to recognize that a journey takes place in steps.
Yes.
When you think about, let me throw an analogy out there and then I'll tie it back to this particular issue. If you allow yourself to become very fat and very lazy, and you're sitting around and you go completely out of shape to the point where you can't do the things that you want to do or need to do in order to provide for yourself and your family, then a desire to be who you need to be is going to motivate you. Let's say that one day the switch just flips and you repent of everything that has led you to that point. And you say, I am going to be a better man. You don't stand up off the couch and transform into a fit, capable person. You have a long journey ahead of you.
Yes.
And for someone who may not even be able to do say you can't even do a single pull-up, you're not going to be able to will yourself to suddenly be able to do 50 pull-ups. That just, the power of your will is not going to be able to do that. You have to be willing to hang at dead weight consistently. Maybe you hang at dead weight for 10 minutes every day and you devote yourself. I'm just going to do that. And then I'm going to pull halfway up for the importance is in being willing to go and hang at dead weight every day. And that really applies, because then eventually, if you're willing to stand on the one step that you can take in that day, eventually you become the capable person that you want to be. And I think we need to be willing to apply the same thing to something like this battle against lust. Because if we are, for someone like me who has slipped into a pretty dark place in my past, especially in that period of depression and anxiety that I referenced earlier, you don't immediately just walk. It may be a switch that goes off one day and you say, I am done with this. I want to be free. Your body's not going to follow immediately. You have to take those steps, and we have to be able and willing to be consistent in that first step that we take, and then the second step we take, rather than being like, oh, I messed up again. I looked at something I shouldn't have, and well, I guess I'm worthless. I'm not able to do this.
Then you throw in the towel completely.
And so different people are going to have to take different measures. I think it's important for us to work with each other and to be honest and talk to each other. But it's difficult to say that there's any set formula, because different people struggle with different things. And some people in the battle against lust may have to completely live, they may have to cut their internet access for a while. to
Mm-hmm.
make that sacrifice and give that up completely for a while. There may be extraordinary steps like that that have to be taken, but that's
Mm-hmm.
not where you want to be forever. You want to
Right.
be
You
able
need to
to
build that muscle
utilize,
back.
yeah, you want to be able to utilize the tools you have, because Satan will use anything to tear you down. And so you can't, the ultimate expression is of separating yourself away from the world is to go and be a monk somewhere on a mountainside away from any temptation. And that's not
Right.
the life we're living here, right?
Nope.
So we do have to step away in order to kill the beast in certain respects. But we're taking these steps, and we're just being consistent in the steps that we take, and not destroying all the hope that we have if we can't take the entire jump in one fell swoop.
Yes. Yeah. Powerful concepts. I love the saying, you can't change your destination overnight, but you can change your direction overnight. And if you
Mm-hmm.
change your direction overnight and stick with it, you'll get your destination.
And
And just being, go ahead.
a lot of the challenge that young men find in this is we try and put a lot on willpower.
Yes.
And like I said, willpower, if you can't do a single push-up, you're not going to will yourself one day to be able to do 50. That's just not going to happen. And we think so often, I've decided not to fall into the temptation of lust anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And we think we can do 50 push-ups all at once.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
No, we've got to put in the work of that dead weight for a little while in order to be able to do one.
Yes.
And so we fall into that trap of thinking I can will myself out of this. You can't. You cannot willpower yourself out of this. You have to allow God to transform your mind. It starts with that purpose that we were talking about, becoming internally the man of God who defends these things. And that becomes your identity. And you take steps in the direction of following God. And you recognize that he has grace in the leading you on that journey.
The man most vulnerable to lust is the man without purpose.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
you just can't overcome that lust. It's very, I don't think it is really possible to overcome that lust with just willpower if you don't have a really strong why. And that's why, I mean, you've got to tap into that purpose. You got to know your purpose and know your why and use that to fuel the willpower. And you also tapped into, you also mentioned a very critical idea of it's hard to be victorious over this in isolation. You're
If not
talking about
impossible.
community. Say it again.
If not impossible.
Yes, yes. And that's, I think back to when I was a teenager, and I did struggle this entirely in isolation, to the point where I thought I was the only one who struggled with that. And you can imagine the spiral of depression and just further how I further fed the problem, thinking I was the only one on the planet that struggled with this. And so, but when I was able to open up communication channels with, um, other older, wiser men, it just peeled back the curtain on how it is possible to be victorious, and there's victory in community and in accountability and in encouragement. That it's a game changer. So I think you're saying that there is no one size fits all necessarily for this, but fighting it in community, knowing your why and your purpose, critical, absolutely critical. A couple other things that I used that certainly helped: scripture memorization. A kind of a topical approach of of memorizing scriptures that were relevant to this. So I think Matthew 5:8 or 9. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. and Philippians 4:8. Finally, brothers, whatever is true, honorable, right, pure, lovely, good repute, excellent, praiseworthy, that whole list there, think on these things. And so I used scripture memorization to build my mental defenses a little bit more. He talked about going from being 500 pounds sitting on the couch, wanting to do 10 chin-ups. Well, that was one thing I added to get myself another chin-up or two. Scripture memorization, and of course prayer. So those are some practical things that I found that I still rely on, as tools in my toolbox.
And the
Um,
scriptural memorization that builds your that transforms your mind, and that builds you into the purpose, because it's kind of like one person, I don't remember what he said, but when he was talking about the contemporary cultural issue of abortion, he said something that really made me pause and think. And I can't remember who said this right now, but he said abortion should not be illegal; it should be unthinkable.
mm, mm. That's
And
good.
you can ponder the implications of that for a while, because as someone who's devout or committedly pro-life, I
Mhm,
don't necessarily, that rubs me the wrong way in the first part of what he says there. But uh, I think, in a sense, that idea applies very much to the idea of lust. When we realize how sexuality and advertising, how pornography, how all of these different perversions,
mhm,
it's not something that is a part of us. Many people, especially outside of the Christian faith, think of this is part of this sexual desire is a part of what we are as men. And we're
mhm.
just having to deny ourselves this innate part of who we are. And that's not the case. That's the lie.
Yes.
We are built for to be defenders, and to have this drive to defend and to protect something that is beautiful. And that beauty is the femininity that we protect at our side in a wife, or the family structure that we build through that relationship, which becomes multi-generational and has so many aspects. But it comes back to, in the sexual sense, it comes back to that intimate connection that God has given just between a man and a wife. And
Mhm,
outside of that, we find, in the end, if our mind is in the purpose of God, and if we allow ourselves to be challenged to transform to his way of thinking, if we become completely absorbed by his purpose, it
mhm.
will not be that we are denying something that we desperately desire and have an innate drive to. It's that everything outside of God's will becomes unthinkable, because we see it as hideous.
Yes.
And that's challenging, because that's very much not the way that this battle is presented by culture. Because there's some cultural pushback even to something like pornography, even in a
Mhm,
secular sense. But it's
mhm.
almost it's almost like this, well, this is the way we are, and this is the way that we're wired, and we have to deny ourselves this. And that's not the ultimate victory. There has to perhaps be, for a time, that legal sense. Maybe you shut the internet off for a while.
Yes.
That might be akin to banning something that we don't want as society. But ultimately, something so hideous as the sacrifice of children in our society, in abortion, it should be
Mhm.
unthinkable. It should be something that we never would do. And
Yeah.
this uh these manifestations of temptation, particularly in pornography, ultimately the victory is when it's unthinkable.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. And that takes cultivating a heart, cultivating a mind. And we
That's
can't.
not easy, and I'm not 100% there. So 20 years from now, hopefully, I'll give an even mature answer for practical application of how to get there. But I'm
Yes.
far enough on the journey, and I understand the beauty of God enough to know that that is the victory ultimately.
Yes. Yeah. Of knowing the thing, the one, the being, God, who is so good, and having tasted how good God is, and how good walking in the confidence and clarity and peace and joy, um, that He offers, that you don't want to even touch anything that is distorted and polluted by the world. Barnabas, this has been phenomenal. I've absolutely loved our conversation together today. Um, it's given me a lot to think about, and I pray it's that this material here is just practical and transformative for anybody listening to it. I would like to be able to direct people to your project, to what you're doing with the Norman Lowell Studio. Where can they find out more about that if they want to buy one of these world-class, beautiful prints, or even original piece of artwork? Where could they go to find that?
Well, the most important thing to do is to come and see it in person. If you're
Mm,
ever in Alaska, stop in the Norman Lowell Gallery because it's all about it's an experience, it's a story that's told in the building here, and there's no way to experience it without walking through yourself. But you can find more information and look us up at normanlowellgallery.org. And the email address is staff@normanlowellgallery.org, and that goes straight to me. So anyone that's interested in further exploring what I do is welcome to look up that website. You can find me personally on Facebook as well at Barnabas Firth. But Facebook is a love-hate relationship for me. So
book
I may
face.
not be on there forever. Yeah, I maybe shouldn't have even given that out there because I may delete that and move over to X sometime in the coming months.
Hey, I'm a fan.